I think another thing I really liked about your story, we're going to go back to one of your childhood stories here. You wrote, "These days people aren't curious enough to find answers. When someone wants to know something, they Google it once and accept the first information or TikTok they find. The feeling of exploration isn't really there today." And when I read this, I really agreed with it. At the same time, I could see this as a mirror reflecting back at me in my own life, because I know there's points in my life where maybe I entered that curiosity phase and I'm really curious about something, but at the same time, most of my life when I want to know something, I Google it, or I just jump to an answer or jump to the first answer I can find, because it takes time and it's time consuming, and we're trained to be efficient and productive and not waste time in the exploration stage of things, and we just want answers. So walk me through the early childhood stories of the encyclopedias and all the experiences you've had with that.
So basically, when we were younger, it's actually really funny. So my dad works in IT, so he's always known things about computers. Even before that was the main thing that people use for information. But still, when we were growing up, there was always the research, which a lot of it's not exactly true, that video games cause violence, and a lot of the internet's going to cause your kids to be evil or something like that. So my parents leaned us away from constantly being on the internet. So whenever we had some questions, which we'd always have questions, the best way to solve it was when my dad came home, have him Google it. But when he wasn't home, my mom said, "Oh, go check the encyclopedias." Because one year, my library, which was they were doing renovations, and they were selling a bunch of stuff. And they sold an entire set of encyclopedias, which I think that the newest one was from 2011, which I guess was kind of new back then, but still, it all felt super old because nobody really used books even back then, or at least not for finding information. But it gave us the hunger for, if we had a question, we'd first look up in the encyclopedia, and we would know for a matter of fact that wasn't going to be enough. Because even if it was a large question, you can only look it up per word. You can only look up, say if I wanted to know, how does a carburetor work? I can only look up car, and then carburetor, and then I would know essentially just a little bit of information. So when my dad came home, we just asked him, "All right, now what is this?" And then we get an answer. And then what is this? And then how does that work? All the way until we knew everything we wanted to know about that thing. And people just don't really do that anymore, because it's really easy to just, look up, how is a carburetor? It's a piece of a car. They'll never want more information, which is technically fine, because they're not really going to need more information unless you want to buy a carburetor, put a carburetor in the car. But it just limits people, because you don't know when someone tells you something and the first thing you look up is just that base level. A lot of times that information isn't inherently the truest thing, it's just the most popular thing. Which obviously there's a lot of cases where it is true, the first thing you look up is the right thing, but it's always more fun and more informative to do more research on it, to learn more and more about that until you know everything about that, both sides of the argument, both sides of how that thing works. I don't know, say if it was planned obsolescence. When I first looked up planned obsolescence, that was one of my first rabbit holes I fell down into. I just first started looking up, it was washing machines. Do washing machines go bad for a certain amount of time? And then I kept going on and on. So I learned about the first ever big news story about it, which was the light bulb, because the light bulb companies just kept lengthening the amount of time the light bulb would last, until they realized, wait a minute, this isn't going to be cost efficient. So then they literally said, all right, we're all getting together, we're planning to always have it at this length. And then I just learned more and more about that, because that goes into World War I, because the reason why that fell apart was because of World War I, but the ideas kept going on after World War I. Or not World War I, maybe World War II. I'm not actually sure which one it is anymore. I'll probably look it up again. But still, that sort of thing isn't really done anymore because people don't have time. They don't really need to know that information, but I just think it would be better if everyone did, because then they would have a better understanding of every idea that they take. Because if you just look up the first information that you find, then whatever everyone else thinks is what you're going to think. And you're just not I don't know, I just don't like the idea of only knowing what people want you to know.
And I also think the ability you have to actually fully understand something comes through that process of searching for information. Because I don't think you can really distill information just by reading it at first glance, right? And that's why a lot of people, I think, when they see books, there's this long book that's 200 pages long about a topic, but a lot of people say, what's the point of reading the whole book? Because you can literally just look at there's only one main lesson in the whole book. What's the point of reading this whole book to get that one lesson? I can just search up the summary of the book and get the lesson and use the lesson. But you don't really understand the lesson unless you go through the process of reading how it's developed and seeing all the different pieces and nuances, and you're reading it over and over again. It's being documented in your mind, and then you have such a foundational understanding of it that you'll never have to look it up again. You'll just know it so well. And which is why even if there's like a 300-page book about one topic, just one simple topic, and you read the whole book about it, my understanding of that would be so strong that I never have to go even think about the topic again. But yeah, I think it's important that we spend more time learning, because it's so easy to live in a world where we have such fast access to this information really quickly. So yeah, it's definitely really important.
Yeah, I think my favorite example of that was recently there's been released a tutorial on how to make an actual mechanical music box from scratch. Because for years and years on YouTube, the only tutorials have been those crank ones where it's a piece of paper and the piece of paper has holes in it. But the best ones are the ones where it's an actual drum that's spinning and that drum hits the cone. But no one really made a YouTube video on how to solve that. And it was really fun watching the guy figure out how to do that, because again, he was like one of the first people to put a tutorial out online doing that. So you can see all the mistakes he's made doing that. Like for instance, when you're doing a music box, so you want two notes to go back to back, you can't play it on the same cone, because the first cone has to play the note and then wait till it's vibrating until it stops vibrating. So you actually have to have two of the exact same length cones back to back. You'll never learn that if you just look up how a music box works. You're just gonna say, oh, it's a cone, and then there's little spikes on the cone, and that's just how it works. You never want to learn, oh, it was this guy who did it, and there's a gear ratio to see how fast you're spinning it, and if you put a motor on this, it'll be a wind-up. How does a wind-up motor work? There's so many things you can learn by like digging down deep to figuring out everything about it, versus just, oh, this is it, here's the answer, we're done.
Yeah, bro, 100% agree. It really goes back to, you've heard of the Socrates method as well, questioning. So Socrates, you probably know, is like the old philosopher from back in Greece. And his method of inquiry, as he defines it, is to just keep asking questions, and like you hear, we're doing an English class, like the definition of justice, or he defines it as this. He asks another question, why is it like this, and why is it like that, and why is it like that? And the whole book is literally just him asking questions and people giving counter arguments and asking questions, and going through this process of like discovery just by asking questions, trying to find the answer to the question. And a book I'm reading right now is called The Goal, and it's a business book. It's supposed to be like a nonfiction book, and it's about like it's about business and how to run an efficient business. But the way this guy wrote the book is very unique. So this is a pretty old book. It's written 30 years ago, but I feel like the principles in it still last till today. And it's a pretty important book, I think, for Amazon. Their employees are required to read this book as well, I've heard. But essentially, the book is supposed to be a nonfiction book teaching you business principles. But if you read it, it's actually a fiction story. If you enjoyed that clip, then click here to see the full, unedited length podcast. Make sure you click here to see the full podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe.